Hello and welcome to all the ghouls and vampires out there. I'm Joe here from East Macostan.
Hello and greetings.
And we have, honestly, one of the funniest horror movies to review I have ever seen in my life. The Son of Ingaji?
I think it's called that.
Horror Island is the alternative title. From 1940. This was hilarious. Honestly, it was not scary, but you can tell it's basically a spoof of Universal's then monster movies, as it's about a couple who inherit gold and a house from a wealthy white woman, possibly I think the only white woman in the locality, and she really doted on the young black girl who was apparently her, I guess her surrogate daughter, and this young girl was always very kind to her, even inviting her to her wedding. And this part of the movie they play very straight and seriously, like in a very interesting way. But this old woman had as a servant this gorilla Frankenstein monster, who at first did dote on the old lady, I mean. But then the couple end up going home, at which point all their friends join them on the wedding night and pull out of Hammer Space instruments and decide to actually regale them with a really good song number.
I mean, show tunes. Who doesn't like show tunes?
Yeah, like, honestly, I probably would have been angry if it were me that my wedding night that they're interrupting. But when you have voice like that, okay, I guess I'll overlook it. But the problem is, they don't leave till the couple are exhausted, showing very little respect for their wedding night. But clearly there's a joke being cracked here. I'm just not sure at whose expense. That said, the old woman who doted on the main female lead, Eleanor, dies to her monster, at which point the couple inherit the house. They're people of interest in the murder. Then another person dies, and it's decided by the police force that Officer Nelson, or Detective Nelson, I should say, is to stay with them and crack the mystery, because the couple deny having been involved in the murder. And that being said, the two people who died were the wealthy woman and her lawyer, whom is black as well. So she was a white woman who favored a black lawyer, which is pretty interesting. As you know, like back then, they, well, you know, like there's the whole, well, there was different social norms, but apparently this woman preferred this one guy as the executive of her will. But the trouble is, the guy is shown to be sleazy and trying to steal Eleanor's inheritance. Eleanor is not impressed, but is trying to be polite. Then the guy dies, as said. So the detective has to move in to, and what's funny is he makes two sandwiches. The monster steals both. He's left confused and flabbergasted, only to have to go to bed without a meal, which is pretty funny. Then him and Bob, the male lead of the film, who's ironically the only guy in the film who seems to have any kind of good sense, are like, they sleep like rocks. The thing is, you've got the detective who, like, you have a monster who walks right past him, drops off a head next to him, keeps going. The detective just rolls over in his sleep. Bob, who's had his head bopped in by his own wife by accident at one point earlier that night, just rolls over as his wife is pretty much kidnapped. It's honestly really funny. And of course, you have Eleanor when she wakes, right before she wakes up, you have a scene where Nelson is told, "My wife is missing," by Bob, who's stricken and panicking. And you have Nelson, "Well, at least she's not waking up to a head next to her. She's the lucky one." At which point it switches to her waking up to see the monster and starts screaming. It was one of the funniest transitions I've ever seen. At which point, Bob, hearing her scream, starts to panic. Now, a fire was started by accident because of the monster's incompetence. At which point, because the monster became smitten with her, and let's be honest, she is a very lovely lady. The female lead, Aliena, is very lovely. So she's got leading lady charm, but the role is played with a sass and a and a good-natured humor that honestly was pretty common back then, but is mixed with a politeness that you don't see in today's roles, male or female. I'm just being honest. So I really like her. I really like Bob as well, but everybody around them are incompetent, which is the joke. Honestly, in some ways, I found this funnier than some Abbott and Costello movies from the same era. It's just... Anyways, Detective Nelson does not manage to figure out where the screams are coming from. Bob locates the smoke coming from a hidden door, then goes to bust the door down, and you've got Nelson pretending like he's charging at it, just not doing anything, standing to the side as an innocent woman is screaming, possibly burning to death, and he's still not going to do his own darn job, even though he could knock down the hidden door with just one throw because he's quite plump. Bob then leads the charge down there. Nelson quite a few steps behind. And then Bob saves his wife. And the monster... Nelson gets knocked out after trying to convince the monster to let him put handcuffs on it. It sounds exactly as dumb as it is presented. It's just so hilarious. He's like, put him up, come on, put him up. Monster just bops him with one hit, knocks him out, and just goes, roar, it goes after Bob. It's hilarious. At which point, Bob tricks him into charging him, only to step aside like a bull guy. He arrive, c'est que the monster is then locked in his cell. Bob chucks the key, grabs his wife, gets the heck out of there, ditching Nelson. Which is and you have Bob, who escapes out of the building. And the last few minutes are very classical horror with Lionel going, but Bob, we've lost everything, our furniture, our inheritance, our house. We have nothing left. And Bob pretty much tells her, not in so many words, but we still have each other. And honestly, I didn't like that house. Anything is better than living in that place. And he says it actually in a way that is both harsh about the house, but also comforting to his wife, who takes comfort, and the two cling to each other. The chief of police arrive. Now, just to roll back a little. Earlier, Detective Nelson had called the police, telling them, okay, I found a corpse here. No, not mine. Well, how else would I be able to call you if I was a corpse? Like, how would I be calling you if I was the dead corpse? Or something to that effect. And it's like, wait, the chief of police is asking, wait, is it your corpse? Like, what kind of idiot is this cop? But the cop, upon arriving, even though the prime suspect in this situation would be Bob, just ends up going, well, poor Nelson, thinking he's died. He's like, he was a brave cop, my most brilliant officer. Which, given how stupid Nelson is, it's like, wait, he's your most brilliant?
I'd hate to say the worst.
Yeah, that's what you said when we were watching it. At which point, you have Nelson who shows up out of the shadows, and in a way that's like, wait, how could he have... But we didn't see him escape. Wasn't he knocked out? Isn't he dead? No. And you have the chief of police who says, wait, Nelson, what were you doing? Well, see, I was... Never mind that. What are those? Pointing to the bags he's holding. Well, these are... Shut up! What's that? Who does that belong to? Nelson rolls his eyes, hands the bags over to the couple, with it revealed that this is the gold that Lionel's aunt, I'll call her aunt, I don't know what else to call her, actually set aside for her, basically saving the inheritance. At which point, you have Bob who exclaims, oh, here's your furniture, Eleanor. And you have Eleanor, and here's your house, Bob. And honestly, they say it so charmingly towards each other that honestly, I wouldn't mind watching a movie with just this couple. And maybe even if it was a romance flick from that era, I probably wouldn't mind it.
And because Nelson came out of the shadows, Bob is now cleared.
Yeah, because Nelson admits that there was a monster in the house. So Bob's cleared. But the trouble is, who knows what this police chief, because he might ask it if the monster was Nelson or something.
And
He doesn't seem very bright.
he was like Black Richard Moore.
From the Detective Conan comics. Yeah, except I think Richard Moore was nowhere near as dumb as the chief of police. But Detective Nelson might be that dumb. But the difference is Detective Nelson, as it's revealed at the end, has a very kind heart. So, there's a charm to him, despite his. Honestly, I think that Nelson was every bit as funny as Abbott and Costello. I really liked this movie. Let's rate it. I gotta say, this movie is one of the funniest comedies I've ever seen in my life. I'm gonna say this is a 3.3.
Yeah. A 4.
You think it's pretty much a perfectly crafted film?
Yes, black cinema. Very underrated, and we don't hear as much about it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, as you just said. Black cinema is typically very, very good. And that's something that, how do I put it? In this day and age, people don't really, I think, properly appreciate. Is that from for one thing, just black cinema, period. And for another, the black cinema of the 40s up through the 80s and whatnot were very good. I prefer a lot of films from that era of black cinema to today's. It's just, there's a warmth, but also how do I put it? The actors and actresses who participated in the black cinema of those eras had a lot of talent. They had a lot of charm. They were very charismatic. And the writing was always typically really good. So I actually think this is an integral part of American cinema of the previous century. And honestly, this is such a gem. But here's the thing about this movie. The way it's poking fun at Universal monster movies is not scornful. It's actually feeling like it's coming from the place of a fan who's just mocking the tropes and trends lovingly, but pointing them out. You have the detective suspecting someone of a murder, screwing it all up. The main hero has to solve the case to clear his own name. The way it's done is meant to make you laugh. But here's the thing. All the trends we see in this movie were trends that the horror genre was to have even to this day. This movie points it out and plays it straight lovingly. This director and writing staff very clearly loved the genre and clearly loved Universal monster movies. I actually think it's a shame this director did not get the chance, I think, to direct a proper Universal monster movie. I imagine he would have been over the moon over it because, every shot in this film, you can tell he's a fan. And I think that if he had had the chance, he would have crafted, I'm not talking a comedy, I'm talking a straight up, ordinary Universal monster movie. He'd have crafted a perfect one. And honestly, I really like Universal monster movies, but I think this director had some serious chops, as did the writer. I don't know much about him, this team. This is my first time watching them, but I really like them. I really like this movie as both a horror and a comedy film. I cannot recommend Horror Island enough. Seriously, it's available on YouTube. You can just go watch it. It is so good. Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Not to mention, the actors in this movie are so good too. My gosh. If you enjoyed this video, do feel free to smash that like and that subscribe button.